Welcome back to the Barrel Talk Podcast. We are back with another episode of Let's Talk About It. The NBA trade deadline is officially now over with, and what a deadline it was. Man, this is probably the best and most exciting NBA trade deadline in probably NBA history. I don't see another deadline coming around where you see multiple young stars being moved in the middle of their prime, like a De'Aaron Fox, like a Luka Doncic. I could even say the same about a Brandon Ingram, a Zach LaVine, all being moved. Jimmy Butler gets moved. Everybody who you thought was going to get moved pretty much got moved. There's a couple players like Cam Johnson or Nikola Vucevic that probably could have been moved that it didn't turn out. There was a lot of teams that had no buzz about Cam Johnson at all through this deadline. But if there was a theory about a player getting moved, they probably almost got moved at this deadline. And we're just going to go through all these trades, talk about them, see if they're winners or losers, kind of just going through the entire trade deadline as according to basically last Saturday night, which is the big one with Luka Doncic, all the way up to 2 o'clock today, which is the time of recording. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. Going to have NBA content going on throughout this back half of this entertaining NBA season now. And now looking at it, I also have been posting more consistently on TikTok. It's going to be called The Follow Through. Links will be in the description. I kind of broke down a lot of these trades specifically, but in this video, we're going to be doing a deep dive into all these trades, and I have them all posted up right here. So let's start out with the big one. Let's start out with Luka Doncic, Anthony Davis trade. Dallas Mavericks got Anthony Davis, Max Christie, 2029 first-round pick via Los Angeles Lakers. Lakers get Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, Markieff Morris. The Utah Jazz hop in this deal to make things work. They snag Jalen Hood-Schifino, and I know they got some cash from that as well, and 2 second-round picks, one from the Clippers and one from the Dallas for the Mavericks for this year. Now, I've had a couple days to sit on this trade. Very interesting. We've already heard about the concerns about the weight and everything else. Luka Doncic just took those team pictures for the LA Lakers that have just came out. I don't know where that 270 is. I really don't know where that 270 is that they were talking about. That was obviously a big hypothetical rumor that was in the Dallas Mavericks organization. But when you look at how tightly kept this trade and this kind of topic was, there wasn't even a rumor, not a single leak about this entire trade. Even coming up to it, it just kind of happened, and it was just everything else came after the trade was already done and accepted and pushed through. A lot of people thought it was fake, including myself. Took a minute for it to settle in, but then once I see Luka at this presser, he kind of looks a little bit distraught in a way because he didn't want to be traded, and for the reasons that they're saying, for their reasons of him to be traded, he's going to have a huge chip on his shoulder. And if I'm an LA Lakers fan, I mean, you're looking up right now if you're an LA Lakers fan from what you did. And we'll talk about another move to get Mark Williams later down the line. But you're adding Luka Doncic, who's 25, close to 26 years old. You're going to have to give him that extension. But if I told Lakers fans that you were going to be able to get Luka Doncic on this team to secure your future, and you're going to get him at $110 million less than what the Dallas Mavericks would have paid him if you had to trade for him next year. So you're getting ahead of the curve. You're getting Luka Doncic on a pretty much a discount, and you're giving up Anthony Davis, and you didn't even have to give up both of your first-round picks because you used that one later down the line in a trade. But from the Lakers' point of view, this secures your future. You get Luka Doncic, and I feel like they've really pivoted to trying to win this year with some of the other moves that they have made, pairing him up with LeBron James. They added Mark Williams now. So looking at that trade, I think the Dallas Mavericks have a 2 to 3-ish year window. It could maybe be 1 because Kyrie Irving has a player option at the end of this year. So he could just bounce and leave if you can't retain him. So there's a real world where if you're a Dallas Mavericks fan, and before the season I told you, well, at the end of the year you're going to lose Kyrie Irving, and then you'd be like, okay, oh yeah, but you don't have Luka Doncic either. You traded him at the deadline. So now you're going to be looking at a team, if Kyrie Irving does decide to bounce and leave because him and Luka had a close relationship, and he was a big part of the reason why he was there and committed to long term. But if you can't retain him now, this could be the biggest debacle in an NBA team's history in one season, one deadline. Because you never know from Kyrie at the end of the day. You never really know. If they already had Kyrie Irving locked down for the future, like a 2-3 year deal, I'm looking at this completely different. But I think it's such a big gamble to trade somebody like Luka Doncic with all the worries you did have when Kyrie Irving could just leave. That's the big part I don't really see a lot of people talking about is, yes, they have a 2 to 3 year window with this team with Anthony Davis, and defensively, they're going to be taking major strides from Luka Doncic to Anthony Davis. They have a great big man rotation. Once they do get Lively back at some point, you still have Gafford, Anthony Davis, Najee Marshall. You go get Caleb Martin from the 76ers. You still have Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving, Spencer Dinwiddie. Like, you have a really deep and versatile team that can guard, but I feel like I haven't seen enough people talk about how Kyrie Irving could just leave after this year if he's not satisfied with how they handled this Luka Doncic situation. Not telling him, you're a franchise player, you're not telling him. A lot of people believe that if Mark Cuban was still having his power and running the Dallas Mavericks, this trade wouldn't happen, and I completely agree. I think this was a weird pivot, but I do like what the Dallas Mavericks have for this 2 to 3 year window, because defensively I think they're going to be stout. Anthony Davis is no scrub. It's not like they fleeced him and didn't get anything. Like, Anthony Davis is still all world. He's still 25 to 28 and 12 a night with all defensive level talent. You're pairing him up now. He's going to be able to play the 4, which he's been wanting to in LA for years. Now you're putting him with somebody like a Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively. When he does come back, you still have a PJ Washington in that front court room as well. So you're looking up if you're the Dallas Mavericks if everything goes your way. But if Kyrie Irving does not take his player option and he decides to become an unrestricted free agent, things could get rough for the Dallas Mavericks. But I do like it from the Dallas perspective on the defensive side and what they could do this year, this specific year, because I feel like with that size they do have, now you have Anthony Davis at the 4, and they've already given the Dallas Mavericks problems. I mean, the OKC Thunder problems in the playoffs last year and this season as well. It's where I'm just like, man, now defensively, they are so stout to go up against a team like OKC with all the size that they have now. And they're really not out of the running at all as well in the Western Conference, which is so bunched up right now. I do like it from the Dallas Mavericks point of view. I'm not just going to shit on Dallas' side. But I think it's a huge gamble for Anthony Davis, who's older, for questions that you had about Luka that I felt like could have been fixed. It wasn't like this was some Jimmy Butler situation where the relationship between him and Pat Riley just went sour and there really wasn't no making that up. It seemed like this was a situation where you just kind of pivoted, didn't tell nobody, because I guarantee you if this got whiffed to the rest of the league, they could have got a better package, yes, but it would have went into Luka's favor to create a bidding war. So that's why he didn't get told. That's why Anthony Davis, LeBron James didn't get told. Jason Kidd didn't get told. If you go watch the presser when they're talking about this trade, Jason Kidd, like, he looks so distraught as well. He looks so, because now you're looking at this season, you're already on the outside of the plan, or right at the plan at the 10 seed. Now you don't have Luka Doncic, who's gonna make his Laker debut this Saturday. It seems like, who was just about to come back. Now you have to change the entire identity of your team. So it's going to be interesting. I'm very interested to see this from the Dallas Mavericks point of view and what they can do this year. I think Jason Kidd's a great coach. Do I think Jason Kidd agrees with this trade? Absolutely fucking not. I think Jason Kidd, from somebody who's played in the NBA before, understands the value and the talent of somebody like a Luka Doncic. And the reasonings that they are coming out with about trading him, I feel like we have just gone over the surface. I'm not really want to get into conspiracy theories, but I feel like we've just only covered the surface of what actually happened behind this Dallas Mavericks trade and trading Luka Doncic. It could be nothing, but I just feel like there's no, even with the reasons they're coming out with, it doesn't justify to me trading a top 3 player in the world based on his weight concerns when he's already averaging 30 plus a game. You can say stuff about his defensive concerns of what he's doing on the court. I understand that point of view, but to go out and trade him, it's just such a crazy thing. And you only got 1 first-round pick for it as well. So if you're really looking at this from, if Kyrie leaves, then you're left with Anthony Davis, who still has multiple years left on his contract. I'm pretty sure he's going to be 34 years old, making like $62 million. So this is a big-time risk from the Dallas Mavericks. And if you're the Lakers, you can compete this year. This year is really just free game if you're the Lakers. This year is complete free game. You're going to have the offseason to build out the team that you want, but you already have a pretty solid roster with Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, Rui, Dorian Finney-Smith, LeBron. Now you have Mark Williams. Like, you have a pretty solid foundation to make something happen this year. And if I'm a team in the first round with Luka with a chip on his shoulder and everything they've been saying about him over there in the Dallas Mavericks organization, it's going to be scary if you have to see LeBron James and Luka Doncic with what they've been able to do at this deadline in the first round. So Lakers point of view, I love it. Dallas point of view, I like it, but it's such a huge gamble. It's where it could really backfire on you in a year, and you could be the laughingstock of the league. Next, moving on to De'Aaron Fox trade. This ended up being like a pseudo three-team trade. So this is also pretty shocking in my eyes, because we all knew De'Aaron Fox wanted to go to San Antonio. Kings getting something back was huge for them, but it's just the package. I feel like the Spurs just fleeced the Sacramento Kings. I could be wrong, but let me know in the comments. But Sacramento Kings get De'Aaron Fox, Jordan McLaughlin, and then the Sacramento Kings get Zach LaVine, Sidi Sudoku, a 2025 first-round pick via Charlotte, top 14 protected, so that won't even convey to the Sacramento Kings, so that's a fake first. 2027 first-round pick via San Antonio, so if you're getting the Spurs pick, you just gave them De'Aaron Fox, an All-NBA guard, with Victor Wembanyama, who's already a top 10 to 15 player in all of basketball. I assume they're going to be good in 2027. So that first round pick doesn't mean shit to you. 2031 first round pick via Minnesota. This could be a very big hit or miss pick. Because who knows what the Minnesota Timberwolves are looking like by 2031, and this is the most valuable pick in the trade itself. Then you get a second round pick via Chicago, second round pick via Denver, and then you get your own second round pick back in 2028. So the Kings have a 2031 pick that the Spurs have still unprotected that they didn't even get back in this trade for De'Aaron Fox. So you didn't get any that first round pick back, which would have been very valuable to you and your team. You didn't get Stephon Castle, you didn't get Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, and relatively one real draft first round pick that could be valuable in that Minnesota Timberwolves pick for De'Aaron Fox. That's an L. That's an L in my opinion. But Sacramento Kings have done some other stuff to make me feel a little bit better. But you add Zach LaVine, and then the Chicago Bulls get Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, and a 2025 first-round pick that was their own. It was like top 10 protected that San Antonio had, so they're not going to have to worry about any protections. They're going to have their own first-round pick so they can tank and do what they want to do this season. But if you're Chicago, I didn't like this at first, but I'm like, you get off the Zach LaVine contract, you get kind of 3 tradable-ish contracts. Maybe Kevin Huerter can revive that value, and you kind of just get some salary filler. You get your own first-round pick back. You can control your destiny in the rest of this year and your tanking process, depending on what they want to do with this team, because they've really offloaded some assets with Zach LaVine, and they were unable to move Vucevic. So it's going to be interesting to see what the second half looks like for the Bulls. But going back to the Spurs side of things, I mean, they played their first game against the Atlanta Hawks last night at the time of this recording. They were able to pick up a win, and the Atlanta Hawks are kind of in free fall roam now, and the Spurs still have all those picks that none of them got included in this trade. They still have a good amount of their own picks. So if I'm the Kings and you didn't ask for it, if you're not going to give me Stephon Castle or Devin Vassell, I'm going to need some of them Hawks picks. They got none of those, and the only one real meaningful first-round pick. So in my opinion, this trade comes down to Zach LaVine, Sidi Sudoku, and that 2031 first-round pick from Minnesota. I just think for De'Aaron Fox, you're getting more. I think you can get more for De'Aaron Fox. I really, really do. Even if his main destination was San Antonio, you could have traded him somewhere else and got more. Like Zach LaVine, what does Zach LaVine do for you, right? I feel like the Sacramento Kings, I've already been hearing stuff about the West Coast Bulls with him, DeMar DeRozan. Now you put Malik Monk at your 1. You have Devin Carter, Keon Ellis, a bonus. You traded for Jake LaRavia in a 3-team deal, I'm pretty sure, which we'll get to. Like, I just don't know what this does for you for the Kings. Like even if you didn't get anything of a young, talented player from the Spurs, those Hawks picks could have been very valuable. I would even have seen a world where, like, I don't want all this pick is just garbage, except for the Minnesota one, which is a hit or miss. So all this, just give me one single Hawks pick at this point for what they're getting in this trade. I feel like they've been fleeced, but from the San Antonio Spurs perspective, this is huge. Now I'm going to pull up the standings right here, because this is a very interesting scene in the Western Conference with how close everything is. So looking at where the Spurs fall now, 22 and 26, currently the 12th seed. I mean, they're right in the mix with everything else going on. I mean, in the Western Conference. When you look at the teams above them, you got Golden State, who made a move, Suns, who made a minor move, Kings, who've made a move, Dallas, who's made a move. Like, So they can be in the mix. They have to go on a run. They picked up a win last night, but getting De'Aaron Fox ready and ramped up to go right away gives them the edge. It's not like he's like an Anthony Davis where he's still nursing an injury, same with Luka Doncic. So they're in a prime spot to which they kept everything. They still have a lot of good contracts for their future to go get another star if they want to down the line. But if what they have this year, I'm not shocked if they can make a push and make a run. I think De'Aaron Fox is that much of a needle mover for this team. You have another scoring threat when Wembanyama is out of the game. I feel like that's a big part of the game where the Spurs struggle at, is when he's out of the game, where do they go to for their offense? Now you can go split minutes with, when you have middle of your game, you can have Chris Paul and Wemby on the court together, and then you have De'Aaron Fox out there at times with just himself and Stephon Castle and Kelvin Johnson. He's running the show. So I think this gives them a whole new dynamic as a team. And I think they're 22-26. A lot of season left in the second half. They could be a scary team. They can definitely be a scary team. I'm not going to be shocked if they can find a way to get into the playoffs, because I think that's how talented of a group they have, and I think that's how much De'Aaron Fox moves the needle. In terms of the Sacramento Kings, they're 25-25. I don't think this moves the needle for the Kings insanely, because you're in a weird spot now to where Zach LaVine did play his first game. They lost to the Orlando Magic at home, but not taking too much stock into that. But it's just like, what's the ceiling of this team? Does Zach LaVine change your ceiling? I don't think so. I think they have the same ceiling as they did with De'Aaron Fox, considering the rest of their roster. But it's going to be interesting to see. I think Sacramento is always an iffy team, but I understand them not trying to go full rebuild mode, because if you're Sacramento Kings, like, you were bad for so long, missing the playoffs, so you just kind of want to stay in this kind of realm for as long as you possibly can. And I think this trade does do that for you. Zach LaVine's an uber talented player. Interested to see what he can do with Sabonis offensively. But it just comes down to, like, this is kind of like how the Bulls were, right? This is kind of how Chicago was before the pre-Lonzo injury. But obviously Sabonis is a better player than Vucevic. I just want to see this ceiling in the Western Conference, because it's so tight-knit and it's so tough. And I feel like really any team in the Western Conference with the amount of talent that is in really seeds 1 through 12, like, anybody can come out here and make a run. I'm not saying the Kings can do it, but I just feel like you could have got a little bit more for De'Aaron Fox. That's just where my mindset is thinking right now. If you're the Spurs, A+, A+, A+. I could say this is, at this, it's not a bigger move than the Luka Doncic trade, but this is right there up there in terms of, like, value right now. And I feel like the Spurs pairing now with what they didn't have to give up and what they could do in the future is very scary for the rest of the league. And I'm very excited for what the Spurs are going to be able to do this season if they can get on a run, get in a play-in, and seeing if they can make the playoffs. Now, there's a lot of smaller trades which will kind of gloss over. Dallas Mavericks also pivot, get Caleb Martin for a second-round pick, which is great value. Caleb Martin can shore up that kind of wing position. And then they also sent Quentin Grimes to Philly in that deal, which I thought Quentin Grimes was playing really, really well for them. But you go get Caleb Martin to kind of shore up that forward position. You have a Swiss Army knife guy that can play 2, 3, 4 off your bench. And Caleb Martin, I do think Caleb Martin gives them a little bit more right now than Quentin Grimes maybe, even though Quentin Grimes is younger. But Philly, this is kind of just a role player swap. I like him in Philly as well. He's kind of more of a spacer, more of a shooter than a Caleb Martin. Caleb Martin's more of a do-it-all kind of guy that can defend multiple positions. I like his fit maybe a little bit more with Dallas than Quentin Grimes. I think this is a good win-win trade for both sides, because I think Philly gets somebody younger that can kind of keep with their current core going forward. Caleb Martin, somebody that right now the Dallas Mavericks could really use. Going over some other trades, Detroit gets KJ Martin, Philly gets cash. Detroit also got 2 seconds. Boston sends Jaden Springer in a second to Houston. They ended up getting a second as well. Daniel Tice goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder, 2031 second round pick, and Pelicans just get cash. City Sudoku ends up getting rerouted in the Sacramento Kings trade with 2 second round picks to get Jonas Valanciunas. So now you're looking at a team where, kind of dabbing into the Sacramento Kings again, now you have Monk, LaVine, DeRozan, Keegan Murray, Sabonis, and off your bench you're going to have Jake LaRavia now, which we'll get to. You're going to have Jonas Valanciunas, who gives you a different look because he can space the floor. So it's going to be interesting. This Sacramento Kings team is going to be one of the better offensive units in this back half of the season. I just want to see if they all put it together. But getting Jonas Valanciunas for what he can give you off the bench is just upgrade your backup center position. I'm perfectly fine with it. I don't know how I feel if they do like Sabonis at the 4, Jonas at the 5, but he can space, so I got to see it to really see how that works on the court. Then we got the Bucks getting Kyle Kuzma, Patrick Bolton Jr., Jericho Sims, second-round draft compensation. The Wizards get Chris Middleton, A.J. Johnson, 2028 first-round pick swap, and the New York Knicks get DeLon Wright in cash. So I love this for all sides. The Bucks needed to get younger. They needed to get younger. They're too old of a team, especially in an Eastern Conference where it's kind of ran by young teams. The Knicks are young. The Celtics are still young, even though they're proven. The Cavs are super, super young. Like, Indiana's young. Like, in a conference where you're having a bunch of young, talented teams, the Bucks needed to get younger. You have Giannis, you have Dame, which I think Dame still has a lot left in the tank. I still think Dame can give you really, really good years down the line next to a Giannis. But you need to get younger. Chris Middleton, with the surgeries he had this offseason, I feel like he even came into the season hobbled, didn't play for a good chunk. And I feel like if you're looking at this window of the Milwaukee Bucks and winning a championship, you had to move on. And getting a guy like Kyle Kuzma, who has been up and down this year in Washington, that Washington Wizards team is so, so bad. So I can't really take too much stock into that. I think if you put him in a winning culture again, like they have right now in Milwaukee, I think he's going to be fine. I like the Patrick Baldwin Jr. pickup for depth if they wanted to throw him in the rotation. He's an older kind of player. Jericho Sims could give them another just center in the rotation with some athleticism. I love what they've been doing with Andre Jackson as well in that shooting guard position. But I think Kuzma, with his rebounding ability, I think they could really dominate the glass with Giannis, Brook Lopez, Kyle Kuzma, Bobby Portis. And they can run some uber, like, jumbo lineups around Damian Lillard. Like, they could really do like a Dame, Kuzma, Giannis, Portis, Brook Lopez, and just have a bunch of size out there on the court with the abnormal amount of spacing, because everybody on that team outside of really Giannis is a consistent three-point shooter. Kyle Kuzma needs to turn it around, but I'm pretty sure he can in this winning culture. You put him with a Giannis and a Dame. I really like them just getting younger, getting somebody that maybe not as good as Chris Middleton, but can fill you and give you kind of the same. I think he's giving you more right now than Chris Middleton can. I think Chris Middleton is a better player, but right now in what situation the Bucks are in, I think Kuzma gives you more than Chris Middleton. Now going on to the Wizards side, they get Chris Middleton. They said they're going to keep him from now, and he didn't get moved at the deadline. So I can see him being moved. I think he has 2 years left on his deal, so he could possibly, I think he's an offseason move. He might not even suit up, and if he does, it would just be to kind of recoup some of that value to try to possibly trade him this offseason, or he could be a buyout guy. Who knows what the Washington Wizards do with that, but their main W is getting A.J. Johnson in this trade. A.J. Johnson is somebody who the Bucks drafted this year in the first round, who I was very questionable of because I thought they could have win now. There was a lot of guys, like somebody like a Ryan Dunn, for example, on the board that they could have went with, who's doing his thing in Phoenix. But they went A.J. Johnson, and they get a 2028 first-round pick swap. Details don't really come with that as well. But they get A.J. Johnson and somebody that can kind of go into Washington and really grow. They don't really have anybody at that point guard spot that's going to be vying for minutes. You have like Malcolm Brogdon, Jordan Poole's a two guard. You have Bub Carrington, who I still feel like is more of a combo too, who can play in the backcourt next to an A.J. Johnson who has a ton of promise. And for what you're giving up, like somebody in Washington who isn't the best free agent destination, who's kind of whiffed on some of the draft picks in the past, you're picking up A.J. Johnson, who was basically a first-round draft pick of your own in this case because he really hasn't gotten any burn with their Bucks. You're getting him in a Kyle Kuzma deal. I think that's a big-time W if you're the Washington Wizards, because he's just somebody else who you can kind of roll the dice with. He's somebody that is going to be a project player. He's still super, super young, so it's going to be like if they can develop him. And I think from the Washington Wizards side, Chris Middleton, if you can get anything for him in this offseason, it's going to be more of a W. But getting A.J. Johnson in this deal, I think is huge for the Washington Wizards. New York Knicks, they kind of needed another more defensive guard off that bench. I think DeLon Wright's a huge pickup. His shot can be iffy and his offensive game can be iffy, but on a really explosive offense like the Knicks, they needed somebody else off that bench that could really come in and just guard, because when you're looking at their bench, it's like Deuce McBride who can guard a little bit, and then you have campaign. So it's just like they need maybe another guard that can come in there and just play some defense, play that tip style basketball. Don't hate it for them. Just come in and get some depth. Can't be mad at it. Now we're going to Brandon Ingram trade. Brandon Ingram to the Toronto Raptors. New Orleans Pelicans get Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, a 2025 second, and then a 2026 first round pick via Indiana. So this is really just like a whatever trade. You're getting off Brandon Ingram. That time in New Orleans unfortunately didn't work out. Bruce Brown is somebody who I could easily see hop on the buyout market. Just because he's a player that contending teams are going to be buying for. He's going to probably get bought out. Kelly Olynyk, I think, will stay on the roster because you can kind of experiment this year at the back half of this year with a 5-man that can really space next to Zion Williamson, and you now have Yves Missi. So Kelly Olynyk gives you the opportunity to experiment in the back half of this season, which has been very rough for the Pelicans. Toronto side of things, I don't know how I feel about the fit. I'm going to have to see it on the court because they have a lot of what Brandon Ingram already does over there. You have Scotty Barnes, who's like the pseudo point forward. RJ Barrett kind of has the same kind of style of a Brandon Ingram in a way. Emmanuel quickly, he's been hurt most of the year. It's been hard for him to consistently stay on the court. But I do think that if they can extend him long term, this could be a very interesting team for the future in terms of what they have around Scotty Barnes. In growing for the future, you get him a nice 1-2 punch in Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes. You still have RJ Barrett. You have Jakob Poeltl still. So this like retool/rebuild the Toronto Raptors are going through with Grady Dick off the bench as well. I think it could turn around a little bit quicker than people think now. I don't think the Toronto Raptors are going to be a title favorite going into next year, but I mean, it gives you more than what you had, and you're getting Brandon Ingram, a high-caliber scorer, for basically nothing that's going to affect your future. I mean, you're losing out on a first-round pick next year from Toronto, but your team is already so young to where, like, you're fine losing a first-round pick if it means getting somebody of the caliber of a Brandon Ingram, but they have to extend him now and sign him, and I haven't heard any word of that happening just so recently, at least, and then he's going to be back at some point, I would say. So we're going to see a little bit of this experiment in the second half of the season when he does come back and get healthy, and hopefully they can kind of get some reps and see what this kind of new like big four of Quickly, Barrett, Ingram, Scotty Barnes all looks like. Even though the fit could be kind of clunky, I'm interested to see where they go with it. And if you're the Toronto Raptors, I'm going to give this trade an A. You're giving up nothing for a high caliber scorer in Brandon Ingram. Like, why not take a swing, see what happens, see if you can make something work with it. Now getting back to the Lakers, who made another move. It's going to be Lakers getting Mark Williams. Charlotte Hornets get Dalton Knecht, Cam Reddish, a 2031 unprotected first-round pick, and a 2030 pick swap. Now, if you're the Charlotte Hornets, you're kind of entering a rebuild while you were already in a rebuild. Interesting move. I'm not saying it's such a fleece like other people are, because Mark Williams has not been able to stay healthy. I think he's missed like 80-something% of his games. Yes, he is super talented offensively, and he's a big that the Lakers desperately need. I'm not mad. Like, you're getting Dalton Knecht, who can be a shooter and a nice piece going forward, even though he is an older player next to LaMelo and Brandon Miller, if you want to go into the future with that. But you're getting a valuable pick for Mark Williams, and you're just kind of banking on the fact that Mark Williams isn't going to be healthy for the Lakers like he wasn't for you. And that's kind of the gamble and risk you're going to take. But for the Lakers side of things, you needed a big. This is a really high-risk, high-reward swing because of the injury concerns and injury history of a Mark Williams. But if you get him to be healthy next to Luka Doncic and LeBron James, the lobs are going to be all over the place. He's a good offensive big in itself from the time he was healthy in Charlotte. So high-risk, high-reward move for the Lakers. Can't be mad at them for it. They needed to make a move like this, but it's going to be a high risk, high reward depending on how it turns out. But if you're the Hornets, you get a valuable pick for somebody that maybe you just really weren't banking on. And with this current new regime with the Charlotte Hornets, they didn't draft him. So him being injured on top of them not drafting him could be a reason for them to just be like, you know what? We'll give you to the Lakers. We'll take their 2031 unprotected first round pick. Who knows what they look like by that time, even with the Luka Doncic. So, who knows? I think this isn't the biggest fleecing in the world from the Hornets' point of view. And you're getting Dalton Knecht, who is a rookie this year as well, who I think fits and gives them a lot more shooting. And he's going to get a lot more burn, which Charlotte if they can get like LaMelo and Brandon Miller healthy, I think he's a good shooting piece to have on this team going forward, depending on what they want to do, because I never know what the Hornets are doing with their future sometimes. Now we have the Jimmy Butler trade. 4-team trade. I think everything is all correct here. Yep. So Golden State Warriors get Jimmy Butler. The Miami Heat get PJ Tucker, Andrew Wiggins, Kyle Anderson, and a protected first-round pick. And now Toronto hopped in, and PJ Tucker and Kyle Anderson are with the Raptors. Detroit Pistons get Lindy Waters, Josh Richardson, Dennis Schroeder, who Dennis Schroeder just went there right before the end of the deadline. Utah Jazz get KJ Martin and a second-round pick. So they hop in to kind of just make money work. Going over Detroit side, just talking quick, I think Dennis Schroeder is somebody they desperately needs another on-ball creator because of Jaden Ivey being hurt the rest of the year. Lindy Waters and Josh Richardson can give them some much-needed shooting. And this is a trade for the Detroit Pistons. I like what they were able to do because they had cap space going into the year. They were able to make themselves a part of a lot of trades, take on some contracts, take on some picks, take on some players to see what they work. And the Detroit Pistons are in the playoffs. Like the Detroit Pistons are the 7th seed. They're going to be a play-in team with how it's shaking out right now, and they could mess around and be a top 6 seed out east. So looking at that, I think Dennis Schroeder, Josh Richardson, and Lindy Waters to a certain extent can definitely help you right now with some of the holes that you do have in your roster next to a Cade Cunningham, especially Dennis Schroeder. I feel like he's been moved around a lot, but Dennis Schroeder can play. So I think this is going to be a way better fit for him compared to Golden State, because they kind of play more of a just high ball screen pick and roll kind of offense in Detroit compared to the Warriors, where it's a lot more space and pace and a lot of movement, a lot of motion. So I think Dennis Schroeder, he's somebody that needs the ball in his hands to really be the player he is. And I think now that you have somebody else who can be a creator outside of Cade Cunningham, who's a veteran, who's been around the league, I think that helps the Detroit Pistons for sure. Miami Heat side of things, now they also traded for Davion Mitchell. So they have a defensive unit with some young talent over there. Now you have Andrew Wiggins. You get a first-round pick that's top 10 protected from the Warriors this season. So that's probably going to convey, you would think. So looking at that, you have Tyler Hero. Like I said, you got Davion Mitchell today as well. You have Andrew Wiggins, Bam Adebayo, Kelly Ware, Terry Rozier, Nikola Jovic, Jaime Jaquez. And they're right in the mix as well. They're right in the mix as well in the Eastern Conference. They're right there where Detroit is. They're 25-24. With the defensive unit they can put out there, they can be a tough out for some teams for sure. I don't think this team is capable enough of making a run, because now you're looking at Tyler Hero, who is an all-star this year, who's been hooping. Now you're looking at him as your number one. Interested to see how that unfolds for the rest of the year. But I think Andrew Wiggins can give you a lot. I think he's going to have more of a longer leash, I feel like, because just the offense is so much different in Miami. I feel like they're going to look at him to just be more aggressive than possibly a Golden State, where it's kind of like tough because of that offense. That offense over there is not really built for anybody. So looking at that, I think Andrew Wiggins, I like the fit. I really do like the fit with the Miami Heat. I think defensively they can give a lot of teams fits of that lineup, but it could go Hero, Davion, or they could even, like, I'm just thinking like defensive lines. You can go Davion, Hayward, Highsmith. You can go Wiggins, Bam, Kelly Ware. You can go Hero, Wiggins, Jovic, Bam, Kelly Ware. Like, they can do a lot of fun things, and I think Erik Spoelstra is going to get the most out of this unit this year. But I think they positioned themselves up pretty good for the future. They got a good return for Jimmy Butler. From all cases, I think they did get a good return from Jimmy Butler. Getting a player like Andrew Wiggins, you could possibly get a first-round pick this year. You're kind of flexible now in the offseason for what you want to do. I think Terry Rozier is kind of just a whiff. Hopefully he can turn it around offensively, but don't hate this from Miami Heat side. Don't hate it at all. Now Golden State. So you add Jimmy Butler, and then he turns around 5 minutes after he's traded, signs the extension. 2 years, $121 million, if I'm not mistaken. So I've been hearing a lot of desperation move from the Golden State Warriors, which it was. It for sure was. But their future's still intact. You got Jimmy Butler. You got the star you needed to pair with Steph Curry and a Draymond Green. You gave up Andrew Wiggins, and you didn't really give up much after that. I feel like you really just gave up Andrew Wiggins in the first. Everything else you were completely fine with giving. So now you're running up a lineup of probably Curry, probably Gary Payton II, Butler, Kuminga, Draymond, or you go Curry, Butler, Kuminga, Draymond Looney, Post / Trace Jackson Davis. So I'm interested to see what the kind of lineups they do bring out when they do have their team fully healthy, fully ready to go, because they should be getting Kuminga back soon. But if you're the Warriors, this is the best case scenario. You got Jimmy Butler, and that 2-year extension puts him on the same timeline as Curry and Draymond. So by the end of the 26-27 season, they will all be off the books, and you'll have nothing but cap space, unless one of them signs another extension down the line, which I don't even know if it's going to happen at this point. So if you're the Golden State Warriors, you still kept Kuminga, Moody, Podziemski. You still have all of your draft capital other than the pick you gave up this year. You're in a really good spot, especially contract-wise, because when it is officially time to kind of wash away this Steph Curry era and move on to something else, you're not going to be having like Curry's gone, but you still have Draymond Green on the books, or those two are gone, you still have Jimmy Butler on the books. They're all contracts. They're all aligned for the 26-27 seasons, I'm pretty sure. So once that season comes, everything's going to be off the books, and they're going to have really a fresh slate of cap space to use for their kind of new era in Golden State. So I think this is the perfect case scenario. They've whiffed on the Kevin Durant situation. Apparently there was a deal done to send KD to the Warriors and then Jimmy Butler to the Suns, but he said he didn't want to go back to the Warriors, which I completely understand from all the narratives that came with that are going to be on your career forever. I also am not mad at him for kind of stepping up and be like, I just don't want this. But for the Warriors, perfect case scenario now, looking at them, they're 25-25, had a bad loss to the Utah Jazz last night where they were just missing a ton of bodies, but they still should have won that game. Now they play the Lakers on the second half of a back-to-back, so they need Jimmy Butler to kind of get ramped up and ready to go because they're in a situation to where that plan is thick. That plan is Dallas at 26-25, 25-25 Kings, 25-25 Suns, 25-25 Warriors, and now the Spurs at 22-26. Going to be right back in the mix to try to get into the play-in. And then you have the Timberwolves at the top of the play-in at the 7th seed, 28-23, who've kind of made some gap and made some space. So the Warriors need to definitely get on some kind of run, but I think if you can get the right version of Jimmy Butler, Steph Curry's still playing at a high level. He just needed somebody to elevate some pressure off of him. You still have Draymond Green. I kind of like what they're getting out of a second rounder in Post with this floor spacing. Brandon Podziemski had a really good game last night. You're just hoping he can turn it around, and you're bringing back Kuminga into the fold. They have a lot going on over there in Golden State, but I think it might be enough to get them into a run. I don't think there's any top teams like this. Like, it's interesting because all the teams in the plan have made big-time caliber moves or in the realm of the plan. Even the Clippers made some moves. Obviously, the Lakers. Nobody, I feel like, is really fearing that top end of the Western Conference. I know OKC is good, but I think that depending on the matchup, they can be had at certain points. So I'm interested to see. I feel like the Western Conference is still super wide open. I know OKC's 40-9. Not saying this about Golden State specifically, but saying this about the whole Western Conference in general. That have made a lot of moves. Like, I think it's still wide open. I think it's still wide open. I think it's going to come down to just matchups. What draw do you get in the first round? Like, what draw do you get in the play-in? Stuff like that is going to come down to. From the Warriors' perspective, you have about a realistic 2-year window, again, to like really contend and really kind of push this as far as you think you can go with Jimmy Butler. I think this is a perfect case scenario from a contract standpoint, saving your future, saving your young assets. You really basically only gave up Wiggins in a first because you Kyle Anderson was a 1 year anyways, and then Dennis Schroeder you traded for middle of the year because you kind of had to. So, like, I think you're going to be in a good position. I really do. I think this is, it obviously could crash and burn, but it's a move they had to make, and for what they gave up, I think it's a good deal. I really do. Now, moving on, PJ Tucker gets routed to the Toronto Raptors. Davion Mitchell goes to the Miami Heat. That's a really, really good pickup. He just screams Heat culture to me coming out of Baylor. I think he's still a tenacious defender, and you put him in a world where like he's going to be running a lot of lineups next to Tyler Hero just because Terry Rozier is not the defender he is. So it's going to be interesting. I think he's going to be that's an underrated pickup. Role player wise, I think that's a very underrated pickup. Charlotte Hornets and the Suns, they finally get off Yusuf Nurkic and a 2026 first round pick attached to that. You add up another draft capital, another draft pick. Now if you're the Charlotte Hornets and everything you've done this trade deadline, now you just need to draft well. Phoenix Suns, you get Cody Martin, Micic, second round pick, Cody Martin, can kind of come in, fill that kind of same void as like a Royce O'Neal. Just kind of gives you a little bit more depth of NBA ready now guys, because you weren't playing. Nurkic just was out of your rotation. So now you're like, you have Tyus, Book, Royce, KD, Nick Richards off your bench. You have Cody Martin, Bradley Beal, Mason Plumlee, Grayson Allen. So like, the Suns need to just be healthy. I think that's the Suns' biggest thing. The Suns could have made any move they wanted to, but it's just going to come down to the fact, are they healthy? Is Kevin Durant and Devin Booker playing together? They have a really good record when KD and Book are both on the court playing, and they're both healthy. That's the main thing. If they can get a good stretch of KD being healthy towards this back half of the year, I think the Suns have the talent to make a run. I still do. I still really do. Because you have Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal at the end of the day. I know it hasn't really worked out so far, but the pieces of a Cody Martin and Nick Richards additions really, really fit. And with the reports have come out of the Phoenix Suns locker room being toxic, I think that will settle down. That could have just been because of a lot of trade rumors with Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, kind of that thing clashing. Like Kevin Durant's all in the trade rumors because Bradley Beal has this no trade clause, and that's kind of forcing the Suns to like maybe think about Kevin Durant. So it's just very interesting. But I think if they can just get healthy, with this team, I think they can make something happen. I think they can go on a little bit of a run. I could say make a case for any of these teams kind of 7 to 10, 11, even 12 with San Antonio making a run this year. But that's how talented the Western Conference is, for real. The Western Conference is so talented. Like, the Suns get in trouble because they just can't stay healthy for a consistent amount of time. It's either one of Book, Durant, and Beal are all missing time, if not two of the three. So if they can just get healthy towards this back half with some of the moves that they've made at the deadline, I think they can be in prime position to make a push. I really do. And then the Charlotte Hornets just draft well. I mean, at this point, I think LaMelo Ball could be on the table this offseason. So they need to figure out what they got going on. They seem to be building a new culture because they got new management, new everything going on over there. A lot of the guys that are on the team they didn't draft. So I want to say Brandon Miller was their draft pick. Mark Williams wasn't, which is a big reason why he got moved for basically nothing because he wasn't healthy. They were banking on that. And then you have LaMelo Ball that wasn't a part of their draft. So LaMelo Ball could be moving. I know he's been extended, but that's just the thing that I'm looking at for this offseason from the Charlotte Hornets. It could be a possibility. Now, the Hawks and the Cavs. Big one that happened today. So glad the Cavs went out and got the 3. Got the small forward position shored up. Didn't give up too much. He gave up Karis LeVert, Georges Niang, 3 second-round picks, 2 future pick swaps for DeAndre Hunter, who's really having a career resurgence year. Has a 6-man over there with the Hawks, and I feel like they're kind of in a free-fall situation right now because Jalen Johnson got hurt, and it's just like kind of a weird mix. They also traded Bogdanovich as well. So you get off DeAndre Hunter, and you go give him in Cleveland, and now you have Garland, D. Mitch, DeAndre Hunter, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. You still have a lot of your bench depth. I think he's a perfect fitting piece. I think he's somebody that can shoot and defend. That's all really Cleveland needs. He's somebody that can shoot the 3 ball and defend guys like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, OG Anunoby when it comes down to it in the playoffs. So I really like this pickup. I'm sad that I really thought it was going to end up being Cam Johnson, but I do like the DeAndre Hunter fit because of how good he has been playing this year. So looking at this in the Cavs, I'm glad they didn't look at them being at the top of the Eastern Conference and be like, oh, we're fine, we can just settle. I'm glad they stayed aggressive, went out and made a move like this to get DeAndre Hunter because we've been looking as an NBA just fandom in general, looking for them to go get a small forward for I feel like the last 3-4 years. Like, we've been waiting for this trade. If you're just a fan of the Cavs and fan of NBA basketball, they finally go out and do it, and now I think I take the Cavs a little bit more seriously because they added somebody that is a 15-20 point per game scorer with even good elite level defense in DeAndre Hunter. So looking at that WWW trade for the Cavs, Hawks, they're in a free flow state right now. Like I kind of said about LaMelo Ball, I'm not going to be shocked if Trae Young is being shopped in the offseason. Now going on to the other part of the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks get Terrence Mann and Bones Highland. The Clippers get Bogdanovich. 3 second-round picks, and the Rockets go and hop in this deal and get Cody Zeller and a 2028 second-round pick. Clippers, huge W here. Huge W. Terrence Mann was kind of in and out of the rotation. You get another bucket getter, another shooter that can space. and Bogdanovich next to a Harden, Kawhi, Derrick Jones Jr., Zubac. Like, I love this move for the Clippers. This is a really safe pick as well. It's not like you had to pay a lot, because if they would have wanted to go get Cam Johnson, that would have cost them a little bit more draft capital. But you give up two guys that weren't in your rotation really, for Bogdanovich, who was going to be a seamless fit playing alongside Harden and Kawhi Leonard. He's somebody that can space. Now you're like, man, you got him coming off your bench. Now you have Harden, Norm Powell, Derrick Jones Jr., Kawhi, Zoo. Now off your bench, you're going to be looking at Bogdanovich being your sixth man. That's a lot of shooting and spacing on the court when you need it. And then the Hawks, they're kind of in the free flow state. Houston comes in and gets a backup big. Marcus Smart gets traded to the Washington Wizards. Marcus Smart and a first-round pick for this season. Washington just stacking up on draft capital, which I like to see, taking on bad contracts. They're in the midst of a rebuild. They need to figure out what their young core is going forward. Marcus Smart is somebody I could see on the buyout market as well, or just being moved in the offseason. Same with Chris Middleton as well. Even Malcolm Brogdon could be on the buyout market for them. Grizzlies get Marvin Bagley III, Johnny Davis, and 2 second-round picks. I just think they wanted to wash their hands with the Marcus Smart situation. I don't really see Marvin Bagley really cracking that rotation. He could, but I think they just wanted to wash their hands with the Marcus Smart situation. Then it didn't work out. He's very, very hurt at this point in his career. They just want to wash their hands with that situation. Another trade was Kevin Porter Jr. going to Milwaukee Bucks, Marjon Beauchamp going to the Clippers. This is a sleeper pickup. I think Kevin Porter, they need some off-the-bench creation over there in Milwaukee. Kevin Porter Jr. can give them that. James Wiseman, I think this was the last trade. James Wiseman gets traded for cash considerations. I mean, to the Toronto Raptors from the Pacers. What a deadline this was. What a deadline this was. This deadline, I feel like, will never, ever be topped. Never, ever be topped. Multiple, I think it was at a point like 8 or 9. I think it's at like 10 now. Maybe 11 of All-Stars moved. So this is the most the NBA is the only sports league in the world that can do the stuff the NBA does. You will never see stars get moved in any other sports league like it does in the NBA. So on a real consistent basis. I feel like a big reason why this deadline was the way it was, teams trying to avoid the second apron. You see all the Milwaukee Bucks making marginal moves. I think the Kuzma trade got them below the second apron. That second apron has put a different kind of fear and urgency in the NBA organizations, because they don't want to be a part of the second apron. Second apron is tough place to be in because you have no flexibility. So I think the second apron has kind of lit a fire under some teams to kind of be more urgent, to make some things happen and to just get under it just a little bit, to have some breathing room, some flexibility, which is a big reason why I think a lot of smaller trades did happen, is just to really get off out of the second apron and give yourself some more flexibility for the future. But man, Luka Doncic traded, De'Aaron Fox traded. Man, this playoff and how I'm looking at the standings, like, man, this Western Conference is going to be a dogfight. A dogfight. The Suns made moves, the Warriors made moves, the Spurs made moves, the Kings made moves, Dallas made the big move, like Luka's a Laker. The Clippers got marginally better, adding Bogdanovich, and they were already really, really good. They needed some more scoring as well. Like, the Rockets are still up at the top. Like, I feel like a big reason why we're seeing a lot of movement at the bottom half of this playoff picture, maybe a lot of teams don't fear. Let me know in the comments. Maybe a lot of teams don't fear Memphis in the first round as a 2 seed. Maybe they don't fear the Rockets as a 3 seed in the first round. I think this is a year where Denver can be had at the 4 seed. Depending, I know they got Nikola Jokic, one of the best players in all of basketball, but like, Denver, I don't think Denver is the same Denver team that they were years prior. Like, OKC's 40-9, and they're going to get Chet Holmgren back, I want to say Friday. Got to see how that looks. But even with Chet Holmgren coming back, I think a lot of these teams in the bottom half of the Western Conference, just maybe that level of fear and standard hasn't really hit, right? Maybe they're like, a lot of these upper teams in the top of the West are young, especially in OKC, Memphis, Houston. They're still super, super young. So, like, looking at a team like Dallas, who's already kind of had OKC's number, who's in the bottom half of the playoffs, like, same with Minnesota. Like, they're a team that's still young, that's still fighting for that really middle of the pack spot. So, like, maybe it's just, like, the Western Conference, in my opinion, I think it's wide open, but I think teams in the West still have that same mindset of, yeah, OKC's really good, but we like our chances. Like, that's kind of what these moves are telling me, especially in the bottom half. They really, like, one, they're desperate teams because they got star players and they're kind of in a weird spot, but two, they like their chances. Not saying that's a good mindset to have, especially going into the playoffs against a team that's 40-9 right now, not even having their full roster healthy. But I can see that message kind of being out there for the Western Conference teams. And for the Eastern Conference, it's really top heavy. It's really, really top heavy. Like, it's Cleveland, Boston, New York, Indy, and the Bucks. Those are the only, like, real contending teams. The sneakiest team is Orlando. They've kind of fallen off a little bit. They're just now getting Paolo and Franz back healthy, so they got to get back going again. Like, Heat made some moves. I think they can be sneaky depending on what matchup they do get, but I think the East is so top-heavy. Meanwhile, the West, I can make an argument for 1 through 12 with the San Antonio Spurs. Like, for if they get in the playoffs, I'm like, man, that's a tough first-round matchup. That's a tough first-round matchup. I can say that for make an argument for any team in the Western Conference of those standards of like, man, that's a tough pull. Like, Denver got to go play Minnesota in the first round. I know, like, Minnesota struggled this year, but that's a tough first-round series. Like, even, like, the Clippers and, like, Houston, even, like, that would be a defensive masterclass. But I'm like, dang, like, Clippers got vets over there. They're well coached. Like, that's a tough pull for the Rockets. Like, I think the West is going to be so interesting this back half of the year. Meanwhile, the East, I feel like, is going to, like, okay, we know what the second round matchups are going to be. Cool. We're going to get there when we get there. But the West is so wide open, in my opinion. Like I said, OKC is very good, but I think it's still wide open, and teams think, oh, we have a chance. We have a chance. So looking at that, I think the second half of the season is going to be insane. We have the All-Star break next week, and I think once that All-Star break ends and we start seeing like Jimmy Butler, Luka, AD, those three big acquisitions on the court healthy, especially in this Western Conference, man, oh man. And if the Spurs can make a push, whew, this second half of the season is going to be so entertaining. So entertaining. And deadline just ended today. Been the talk of the world for the past couple of days, and now we got Curry and Bron playing tonight as well on TNT. So, and they always put on bangers. So, looking at this, super excited for the back half of the NBA season. Also talked more of these on my TikTok. Link will be in the description, the follow through. But that is all I have for this episode of Let's Talk About It. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Barrel Talk Podcast. Hope you tune in to future episodes.